She was 8 months pregnant, shivering on the curb of a Hamptons estate, while her husband toasted champagne with his mistress inside. They thought Eleanor was just a poor orphan with nowhere to go. They thought they had won, but they made one fatal mistake. They didn't check who her family really was. They didn't know that the shivering woman they just kicked into the mud was the protected younger sister of the two most ruthless billionaires in New York City. And when the Kensington brothers find out what Liam did to their little sister, God help him, because the law won't. The thunder over the Hamptons sounded like the cracking of a whip. Inside the sprawling Hawthorne Manor, the warmth of the fireplace did nothing to melt the ice in the room. Eleanor Hawthorne stood by the grand oak staircase, her hand instinctively protecting her swollen belly. She was 8 months pregnant, her ankles swollen, wearing a faded cardigan that had seen better days. Across from her, lounging on the Italian leather sofa, sat Liam, her husband of 3 years. And next to him, sipping a vintage 1998 Dom Perignon, was Camilla. Camilla wasn't just a stranger. She had been Eleanor's best friend in college. Now she was wearing Eleanor's diamond tennis bracelet and resting her hand on Liam's knee. "Liam, please," Eleanor whispered, her voice trembling. "It's storming outside. I have nowhere to go. The doctor said my blood pressure is too high. I can't be under stress." Liam didn't even look up from the document on the coffee table. He adjusted his cuff, a Patek Philippe watch Eleanor had saved for 2 years to buy him, and slid the papers across the mahogany surface. "Sign it, Elle," Liam said, his voice bored. "It's over. It's been over for a long time. Camilla and I are in love. We need the house for the nursery." Eleanor felt the air leave her lungs. "The nursery? That's for our baby." Evelyn, Liam's mother, stepped out of the shadows of the hallway. She was a tall, imposing woman who held onto the family's dwindling fortune with a vice grip. She sneered at Eleanor. "For that thing," Evelyn pointed a manicured finger at Eleanor's stomach. "Liam needs an heir with pedigree, Eleanor, not the offspring of a charity case. We've tolerated your mediocrity long enough. But now that Liam's company, Sterling Dynamics, is merging with the Grand Kensington Group, he needs a wife who looks the part. Camilla comes from money. You come from nothing." "I cooked for you," Eleanor cried, tears finally spilling. "I cleaned this house when you couldn't afford the staff. I supported you when the stocks crashed." "And you were adequately compensated with room and board," Liam snapped, finally looking at her. His eyes were cold, dead. "Security is waiting outside. You have 10 minutes to pack a bag, leave the jewelry, leave the cards." "Liam, I'm pregnant with your son." "Is it mine?" Camilla chimed in, her voice like syrup laced with arsenic. She stood up and walked over to Eleanor, leaning in close. "You know, Elle, Liam told me how boring you are. How you just lay there. He needs a real woman. Besides, we've already cleared out the guest room. Your stuff is in garbage bags on the porch." Eleanor looked at Liam, searching for a shred of the man she married. "If you do this," she said, her voice dropping to a terrifyingly calm whisper, "there is no coming back. You are killing us." "Don't be dramatic," Evelyn scoffed. "Here." She threw a crumpled $100 bill at Eleanor's feet. "Take a bus." The security guard, a burly man named Graves who looked apologetic but valued his paycheck more, took Eleanor by the arm. "Ma'am, let's go. Don't make me drag you." Eleanor was shoved out the heavy oak doors. The wind hit her instantly. The rain was freezing, mixing with the tears on her face. She stumbled down the stone steps, seeing 3 black trash bags wet on the driveway. Behind her, the warm glow of the manor lights flickered. She saw the silhouettes in the window. Liam and Camilla were kissing. Evelyn was closing the curtains. She dragged the bags to the edge of the gate, the freezing rain soaking her to the bone. Pain shot through her abdomen. She collapsed onto the wet asphalt of the service road. "I'm going to die," she thought. "My baby is going to die here." Headlights cut through the darkness. It wasn't a taxi. It wasn't a bus. A convoy of 3 armored Cadillac Escalades screeched to a halt in front of her. The doors flew open before the wheels stopped moving. 2 men stepped out. They were giants. Both over 6'3", wearing bespoke Tom Ford suits that cost more than Liam's car. They didn't care about the rain ruining the Italian wool. They sprinted toward her. "Elle!" the first one screamed. It was a sound of pure primal panic. Eleanor looked up, her vision blurring. "Sebastian?" she whispered. Sebastian Kensington, the shark of Wall Street, the man who had just bought half of Manhattan, dropped to his knees in the mud, scooping his sister into his arms. His face, usually stone cold on the cover of Forbes, was twisted in rage and terror. The second man, Julian Kensington, a tech mogul known for destroying competitors with a single algorithm, was already on his phone, screaming orders. "Get the chopper to the nearest clearing. Now, prepare the OR at Lenox Hill. If she loses this baby, I will burn this entire state to the ground." They kicked me out," Eleanor gasped, clutching Sebastian's lapel. "Liam, Camilla." Sebastian looked up at the Hawthorne Manor. The look in his eyes wasn't just anger. It was a death sentence. "Sleep, Elle," Sebastian whispered, lifting her effortlessly. "You're safe now, and they are already dead. They just don't know it yet." 3 years later, life had been good to Liam Hawthorne, or so it seemed on Instagram. Sterling Dynamics had survived the merger scare, largely thanks to a mysterious injection of capital from a shell company called Valkyrie Holdings. Liam assumed it was his genius business acumen. He didn't know it was bait. He sat in his corner office in Midtown Manhattan, looking out at the skyline. He wore a better suit now. He looked older, his face slightly puffy from too much scotch and too many late nights. "Babe, are you listening to me?" Liam spun his chair around. Camilla was pacing the office, scrolling furiously on her phone. She looked expensive, but hard. The college sweetheart vibe was gone, replaced by the sharp edges of a woman constantly looking over her shoulder. "What is it, Camilla?" "The gala. The Blackwood charity ball tonight," she snapped. "Everyone is talking about the guest list. The hosts are the heads of the Kensington Group. They've never hosted a public event before. They're elusive. Ghosts." "So?" Liam shrugged. "We're invited. VIP table. My mother made sure of it." "It feels off, Liam," Camilla said, biting a manicured nail. "Ever since Eleanor disappeared, I felt like someone is watching us. And this Valkyrie Holdings contract? It's too good to be true. They fund our entire operation, but we've never met the CEO." "You're paranoid," Liam laughed, standing up to pour a drink. "Eleanor is probably waiting tables in Idaho, living in a trailer. She had no one, Camilla." "My mother checked. No living relatives on record. She was a ghost." "I guess," Camilla muttered, but she didn't mention the strange phone calls she'd been getting, or the fact that her credit cards had been declined twice last week at Bergdorf Goodman for security checks that lasted hours. Meanwhile, at the Hawthorne residence, Evelyn was preening in front of the mirror. She adjusted her pearl necklace. "Tonight is the night," Evelyn told her reflection. "I will introduce Liam to Sebastian Kensington. Once we secure a direct partnership with the Kensingtons, we won't need that Valkyrie shell company anymore. We'll be billionaires." She had no idea that the spider had already spun the web. She was just waiting to feel the bite. The Blackwood Gala was held at the Plaza Hotel. It was the event of the decade. The paparazzi line was 10 deep. When Liam's limousine pulled up, he stepped out, flashing his signature, charming smile. Camilla hung on his arm, draped in red silk, wearing a diamond necklace that looked suspiciously similar to one Eleanor's grandmother had left her, one Liam had claimed was lost during the divorce. They walked the red carpet, answering questions about Sterling Dynamics, rising stock prices. "Mr. Hawthorne," a reporter from TMZ shouted. "Any comment on the rumors that Valkyrie Holdings is pulling your funding?" Liam froze. "That's ridiculous. Our partnership is stronger than ever." "What about your ex-wife?" another reporter shouted. "Eleanor, any word on her whereabouts?" Liam's smile faltered. "We wish her well, wherever she is. We've moved on." Inside the ballroom, the atmosphere was electric. The elite of New York were whispering. The Kensington brothers were legends, ruthless, unforgiving, and incredibly private. Liam found their table near the front. It was arguably the best seat in the house. "See?" Liam whispered to Camilla, squeezing her thigh. "VIP. They respect us." The lights dimmed. A spotlight hit the center stage. The music stopped. The silence was absolute. A man walked onto the stage. It was Julian Kensington. He was devastatingly handsome, with dark hair and eyes that scanned the room like a predator. "Ladies and gentlemen," Julian's voice boomed. "Thank you for joining us. Tonight is a special night. Tonight, we celebrate family. And we celebrate justice." The crowd applauded politely, though some looked confused by his tone. "For years," Julian continued, "the Kensington Group has operated in the shadows, but my brother Sebastian and I decided it was time to step into the light, because we have a new chairwoman who believes in transparency." Liam whispered to Evelyn, "Chairwoman? I thought it was just the two brothers." "And," Julian smiled, a smile that didn't reach his eyes, "we are also here to announce the acquisition of a certain company, a company that has been, unknowingly, owned by us for the last 3 years. Behind Julian, the giant screen lit up. The logo of Sterling Dynamics appeared. Liam dropped his glass. It shattered, the champagne soaking his shoes. "What? That's impossible." "And now," Julian gestured to the curtain, "please welcome the CEO of Valkyrie Holdings and the new owner of the Hawthorne estate, my sister." The curtain rose. A collective gasp swept through the ballroom. Descending the stairs was a woman who looked like a queen. She wore a midnight blue gown encrusted with real sapphires that caught the light like stars. Her hair, once frizzy and tied back, was now a cascading wave of silk. Her skin glowed. She radiated power, wealth, and a terrifying elegance. But it was the face that Liam knew better than his own. It was Eleanor. But not the Eleanor he knew. Not the woman in the faded cardigan. This woman held her head high, her eyes locking onto Liam's table with the precision of a sniper. Walking beside her, holding her hand, was a beautiful 3-year-old boy with curly hair and Liam's exact nose. "Oh my God," Camilla whispered, her hand flying to her mouth. "Is that—" Sebastian Kensington stepped out from the other side, joining his sister. He placed a protective hand on her shoulder. Liam stood up, his legs shaking. "Eleanor?" he said aloud, his voice cracking. The room was so quiet that people nearby turned to look at him. Eleanor stepped to the microphone. She didn't smile. "Good evening." Her voice was smooth, cultured, commanding. 3 years ago, I was left to die in a storm. I was told I was nothing. I was told I had no pedigree." She looked directly at Evelyn Hawthorne. Evelyn's face had gone pale white, her mouth opening and closing like a fish. "I am Eleanor Kensington," she declared. "For years I hid my identity, because I wanted to be loved for who I was, not for my billions. I wanted a real family. I thought I found it." She paused, letting the tension build. "I was wrong, but tonight isn't about the past, it's about business. As the majority shareholder of Valkyrie Holdings, I am exercising my right to call in all debts owed by Sterling Dynamics." She pulled a document from a folder on the podium. "Mr. Liam Hawthorne," she said, addressing him directly across the room. The spotlight swung and hit Liam, blinding him. He shielded his eyes, looking like a cornered rat. "You borrowed $300 million from Valkyrie to keep your company afloat. The contract stated that if the debt wasn't repaid within 36 months, full ownership of your assets, including your personal properties, your patents, and the Hawthorne Manor, would revert to the lender." "That's a lie," Liam shouted, panic taking over. "We have an extension." "Read the fine print, Liam," Eleanor said coldly. "The extension was void if the borrower was found to have engaged in moral turpitude." The screen behind her changed. It wasn't a business chart. It was a video. It was grainy, security camera footage, but clear enough. It showed Camilla meeting with a man in a parking garage, handing him a thick envelope. "Camilla?" Liam looked at his wife. "What is that?" Eleanor's voice cut through the confusion. "That is your wife, Camilla, paying off the safety inspector to ignore the structural faults in your new building project. Fraud, Liam. It's a felony. The crowd erupted. Flashes popped like strobe lights. And one more thing, Eleanor added, her eyes softening as she looked down at the little boy holding her hand. You threw me out because you wanted a pedigree heir. She picked up the boy. This is Leo. He is your son, Liam. But don't worry. You signed away your parental rights in the divorce decree you forced me to sign. You claimed the child wasn't yours, remember? You wrote it in the filing to avoid child support. Liam felt the world spinning. He looked at the boy, his son, standing next to the two most powerful men in the world. You gave up your son, Eleanor said, for a woman who is currently embezzling from you. Liam turned to Camilla. Her face was a mask of guilt. Security! Sebastian Kensington's voice boomed over the mic, stepping forward. Please escort Mr. Hawthorne and his family out. They are trespassing on Kensington property. Two familiar figures stepped out of the shadows near Liam's table. It wasn't the hotel security, it was the FBI. The ballroom at the plaza was in chaos. The flashes of cameras turned into a strobe light of humiliation as FBI agents in windbreakers moved through the crowd of New York's elite. Liam Hawthorne stood frozen, his hands still reaching out toward the son he had discarded. This is a mistake, he stammered as an agent grabbed his wrist. Do you know who I am? I am the CEO of Sterling Dynamics. You're the former CEO, Agent Miller replied, slapping handcuffs onto Liam's wrists. And you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit wire fraud and securities fraud. Beside him, Camilla wasn't going quietly. She was screaming, thrashing against a female officer. Get your hands off me. It was him. Liam made me sign those papers. I'm just his wife. That's not what your emails say, Mrs. Hawthorne, Julian Kensington said, stepping down from the stage. He held up a tablet. We have the server logs. You've been siphoning Sterling Dynamics, funds into an offshore account in the Caymans for 6 months. You were planning to leave him, weren't you? Liam whipped his head around, staring at Camilla. What? Camilla? Tell them he's lying. Camilla stopped struggling. She looked at Liam with pure venom. You idiot. Did you really think I loved you? You're weak. You threw away a diamond for a rock, and I just wanted to cash out before you crashed the company. The betrayal hit Liam harder than the handcuffs. The woman he had destroyed his family for, the woman he had kicked a pregnant Eleanor into the rain for, had been playing him the entire time. As they were dragged out of the ballroom, Liam caught one last glimpse of the stage. Eleanor hadn't moved. She stood there, regal and untouched, holding Leo. She didn't look angry. She looked indifferent, as if Liam was no longer a person to her, but a bad memory being wiped away. The nightmare didn't end at the police station. Because Eleanor and her brothers were thorough, Liam and Camilla were released on bail 24 hours later. Bail paid by Evelyn, who had liquidated her last remaining jewelry. They returned to Hawthorne Manor, exhausted and smelling of a holding cell. At least we have the house, Evelyn wept, pacing the foyer. We can sell the art. We can fight this. But when they approached the front door, the locks didn't work. What is this? Liam rattled the handle. Key doesn't work! The heavy oak door swung open from the inside. But it wasn't their butler. It was Graves, the security guard who had shoved Eleanor out 3 years ago. He was wearing a new uniform. The crest on his blazer wasn't the Hawthorne lion anymore. It was the Kensington shield. Mr. Hawthorne, Graves said, his voice devoid of sympathy. You are trespassing. Trespassing? This is my house, Liam screamed. Not anymore, Graves replied. As of 8 a.m. this morning, Valkyrie Holdings exercised the foreclosure clause on the defaulted loan. The deed has been transferred. You have 1 hour to collect personal items. No valuables, no art, no jewelry. You can't do this, Evelyn shrieked. I'm just following orders, Graves said, a faint smile playing on his lips. The exact same words he had said to Eleanor that rainy night. Don't make me drag you. They scrambled through the house like rats, shoving clothes into garbage bags. The irony wasn't lost on Liam. 3 years ago, he had watched Eleanor pack her life into trash bags. Now he was doing the same. As they walked out the front gate, carrying their plastic sacks, A black Rolls-Royce Phantom pulled up to the curb. The window rolled down. Sebastian Kensington sat in the back seat. He didn't get out. He just looked at them over the rim of his sunglasses. "Enjoy the motel," Sebastian said. "I hear the rates in Queens are affordable this time of year." "Why are you doing this?" Liam cried, gripping the iron bars of the gate. "Is it revenge?" "Revenge is emotional," Sebastian said calmly. "This is just a business correction. You made a bad investment, Liam. You bet against Eleanor, and the house always wins." The window rolled up and the car drove away, leaving them standing on the curb. It began to rain. 6 months later. Liam was living in a 2-bedroom apartment in Queens with Evelyn. Camilla had fled the country the moment bail was posted. Rumor had it she was in Brazil with a new boyfriend, leaving Liam to face the charges alone. He was broke. His reputation was incinerated. But he had one card left to play. Or so his court-appointed lawyer told him. The kid, the lawyer, a sweaty man named Mr. Henderson, said, "If you can get partial custody of the boy, you can petition for child support. The mother is a billionaire. Even 10% custody could mean $50,000 a month in support payments. It's your only way out of bankruptcy." It was a despicable plan. To use the son he had rejected as a paycheck. But Liam was desperate. The custody hearing was set for a Tuesday. Liam wore his only remaining suit, which was now fraying at the cuffs. He walked into the family court expecting a fight, but he wasn't prepared for the war machine the Kensingtons brought. Eleanor sat at the plaintiff's table. She looked serene in a cream-colored business suit. Flanking her were 4 lawyers from the most expensive firm in the city, and behind her, sitting in the front row like silent sentinels, were Sebastian and Julian. "Your Honor," Mr. Henderson started, his voice shaking. "My client, Mr. Hawthorne, is the biological father of the child, Leo. He was under extreme duress when he signed the divorce papers. He wants to be a part of his son's life. He loves him." Eleanor didn't scoff. She didn't roll her eyes. She simply nodded to her lead attorney, a sharp-eyed woman named Mrs. Vance. Mrs. Vance stood up. "Your Honor, we would like to submit Evidence A into the record." She handed a document to the judge. "This is a notarized affidavit signed by Mr. Hawthorne 3 years ago," Mrs. Vance said. "In it, he specifically denies paternity. He claims, and I quote, 'The child is a bastard and not of my blood.' He waived all rights to avoid paying $500 a month in support." The judge looked over his glasses at Liam. "Is this your signature, Mr. Hawthorne?" I was confused," Liam stammered. "I was misled by my then-fiancé." "We also have Evidence B," Mrs. Vance continued. She pressed a button, and a recording played over the courtroom speakers. It was Liam's voice, recorded from the security system at Hawthorne Manor the night he kicked Eleanor out. "Is it mine? Liam needs an heir with pedigree, Eleanor, not the offspring of a charity case." The courtroom was silent. The cruelty of his own voice echoed off the walls. "And finally," Mrs. Vance said, dropping the hammer, "Mr. Hawthorne is currently facing 15 years in federal prison for fraud. He has no income, no home, and is currently living with his mother, who has been indicted as an accomplice in hiding assets. He is not seeking custody for love, Your Honor. He is seeking a payday." Liam stood up, his face red. "I'm his father. He needs a father." Julian Kensington stood up in the gallery. He didn't shout. He just spoke, his voice carrying that terrifying Kensington weight. "He has a father," Julian said. "He has 2 uncles who would die for him. And he has a mother who is worth 10 of you." The judge banged his gavel. "Mr. Hawthorne, your petition is denied with prejudice. Furthermore, I am issuing a permanent restraining order. If you come within 500 feet of Leo Kensington or Eleanor Kensington, you will be arrested immediately. Case dismissed." Liam slumped in his chair. It was over. The golden ticket was gone. As he walked out of the courthouse, defeated, Eleanor was waiting by her car. The security detail stepped forward, but she raised a hand to stop them. She walked up to Liam. She was close enough that he could smell her perfume. Something expensive, floral, and strong. "Why, Elle?" Liam whispered. "You have everything." Why did you have to take the only thing I had left? I didn't take anything from you, Liam, she said softly. You gave it all away. You gave away your wife. You gave away your son. You gave away your dignity. I just picked up the pieces you threw in the trash and turned them into gold. I'm sorry, he wept. I'm so sorry. I know, she said, but you're not sorry you hurt me. You're sorry you lost. She got into the car. As the window rolled up, Liam saw little Leo sitting in a car seat, playing with a toy airplane. The boy looked up, locked eyes with Liam for a fleeting second, and then went back to playing. He didn't know who the crying man on the sidewalk was. And he never would. 5 years later, the neon sign of Sal's 24-hour diner flickered with a dying buzz, casting a sickly yellow light onto the wet pavement of a forgotten corner in Jersey City. Inside, the air hung heavy with the smell of burnt bacon, stale cigarette smoke clinging to customers' coats, and the overwhelming scent of grease that seemed to seep into the pores of anyone who stayed longer than 20 minutes. Liam Hawthorne wiped the counter with a rag that had been gray for weeks. His hands, once manicured and accustomed to signing million-dollar contracts, were now rough, chapped, and red from the bleach water. He checked the clock on the wall. 2:14 a.m. 4 more hours until his shift ended. 4 more hours until he could walk back to the basement apartment he shared with 2 other day laborers, collapse onto a mattress that smelled of mildew, and try to forget who he used to be. 5 years. It felt like 5 lifetimes. The fall had been absolute. Prison had been a terrifying, violent wake-up call, but the years after his release had been a slow, grinding purgatory. The industry had blacklisted him. His friends, the ones who drank his scotch and laughed at his jokes on the yacht, had deleted his number the day the handcuffs clicked shut. But the hardest part hadn't been the prison cell. It had been watching his mother, Evelyn, deteriorate. Evelyn Hawthorne, the woman who had once presided over the Hamptons' social season like a queen, had not possessed the fortitude to survive the fall. She had spent her final years in a state-subsidized nursing facility, her mind retreating into a fantasy where she was still wealthy. She would scream at the nurses for not bringing her tea in bone china. She died alone on a Tuesday, clutching a plastic rosary, waiting for a son who was stuck working a double shift just to pay her heating bill. Liam had buried her in a pauper's grave. No headstone, just a numbered marker in the grass. That was the day the last of Liam's arrogance finally died. "Hey! Buddy! Earth to loser!" The shout snapped Liam back to the present. A truck driver in booth 4 was waving an empty mug. "More coffee," the man grunted. "And heat it up this time." "Right away," Liam muttered, his voice raspy. He kept his head down. That was the trick to survival. Never make eye contact. If you don't look at them, they don't see you. You're just a pair of hands serving food. The bell above the diner door jingled violently as a gust of wind blew it open. Liam didn't look up immediately. He focused on the coffee pot, watching the dark liquid swirl. But the shift in the room's atmosphere was palpable. The diner was usually filled with exhausted truckers, night shift nurses, and people who had nowhere else to go. The couple that just walked in didn't belong. The scent hit Liam first. It wasn't grease or rain. It was Chanel No. 5, mixed with the sharp, metallic tang of expensive hairspray. It was the smell of the life he used to live. "Ugh, Arthur, really?" A woman's voice cut through the diner's hum. It was a voice that scraped against Liam's spine like a rusted knife. "This place is a dump. I told you we should have called the driver back." "Relax, babe," a man's voice replied, deep, booming, arrogant. "The Jag has a flat. We wait here for the tow, we get a coffee, we leave. Don't be such a princess." Liam froze. He stood with his back to the door, his knuckles turning white as he gripped the coffee pot. He knew that voice. Not the man's, but the woman's. He hadn't heard it in 5 years. Not since she screamed at the FBI agents to get their hands off her silk dress. Not since she fled the country while he rotted in a holding cell. It was Camilla. His heart hammered against his ribs, a frantic bird trapped in a cage. "Don't turn around," he told himself. "Just go to the kitchen. Tell Sal you're sick. Leave." "Waiter," the man Arthur bellowed. "Table for 2. And wipe it down. It looks sticky." Liam had no choice. If he walked out, he lost the job. If he lost the job, he was on the street. He took a deep breath, pulled his stained baseball cap lower over his eyes, and turned around. He walked toward booth 6, keeping his gaze fixed firmly on the linoleum floor. He placed the menus down. "Coffee?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. "2. Black. And make it fresh," Arthur said. He was a large man in his 60s, wearing a suit that cost more than this entire diner. He had the red face of a man who drank too much and shouted too often. Next to him sat Camilla. Liam risked a glance from the corner of his eye. She looked different. Older, certainly. But it was more than that. Her face was tight, the skin pulled unnaturally taut around the eyes and jawline, the result of discount plastic surgery trying to hold back time. She was draped in a fur coat that looked slightly matted, and the diamond on her finger was big but cloudy. She wasn't the queen she had tried to be. She was a trophy wife who was starting to gather dust on the shelf. Liam turned to leave, desperate to escape. "Wait a second," Camilla said. Her voice was sharp. "Do I know you?" Liam stopped. The blood drained from his face. "I don't think so, ma'am. I just work here." "Turn around," she commanded. "Let me see your face." "Babe, leave the help alone," Arthur grumbled, scrolling on his phone. "No, Arthur, look at him," Camilla insisted. She stood up, her heels clicking on the cheap tile. She walked around the table and stepped into Liam's personal space. She reached out with a manicured hand and tipped the brim of his hat up. Their eyes locked. For a second, there was silence, the kind of silence that happens before a car crash. Camilla's eyes went wide. Her mouth dropped open, and then, slowly, twisted into a smile of pure, malicious delight. "Oh, my God," she breathed. A laugh bubbled up from her throat, a cruel, jagged sound. "Arthur, you are not going to believe this." "What?" Arthur looked up, annoyed. "This," Camilla gestured at Liam like he was a zoo exhibit. "This is Liam Hawthorne." Arthur squinted. "Who?" "My ex-husband," Camilla shrieked with laughter. "The CEO, the visionary, the man who was supposed to give me the world." She stepped closer, looking Liam up and down, taking in the grease stains on his apron, the holes in his sneakers, the gray in his thinning hair. "Look at you," she sneered. "The great Liam Hawthorne, pouring coffee for truck drivers in Jersey. I heard you went to prison, but I didn't think you'd fall this far." The entire diner was watching now. The trucker in booth 4 had stopped chewing. The cook had leaned out of the kitchen window. Liam felt a heat rising in his chest. It wasn't anger. It was shame. Burning, suffocating shame. "I'm just trying to do my job, Camilla," Liam said quietly. "Please, sit down." "Your job?" Camilla mocked. "Your job was running a Fortune 500 company. Your job was buying me villas in Tuscany. And look where you ended up. You know, I almost felt bad when I left you. I almost felt guilty taking that money from the company accounts." She leaned in, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper that only he could hear. "But looking at you now, I realize I made the right choice. You were always a loser, Liam. You just had a nice suit." "That's enough," Arthur said, though he was smirking now. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a thick wad of cash. He peeled off a single crisp $1 bill. "Here," Arthur said, tossing the bill onto the table. It landed in a puddle of spilled sugar water. "For the entertainment, keep the change, sport." Camilla laughed again. She reached into her expensive purse, a knockoff Hermes, Liam realized now, and pulled out another bill, a 20. "Go on, Liam," she taunted, waving the money in his face. "Take it. You look like you haven't eaten a real meal in weeks. Take it. Dance for us." Liam looked at the money. Then he looked at Arthur, a man who clearly despised the woman he was with but liked the way she looked on his arm. And finally, he looked at Camilla. He really looked at her. He didn't see the monster who had destroyed his life anymore. He saw a woman who was terrified. He saw the desperation in the way she clung to Arthur's arm. He saw the panic in her eyes when she looked at her own reflection. She was still running. She was still selling her soul, piece by piece, to the highest bidder, terrified that one day the buyers would stop coming. She was in a prison of her own making. A prison of gold bars, perhaps, but a prison nonetheless. And in that moment, The shame in Liam's chest evaporated. He reached out and took the $20 bill from her hand. Camilla smirked triumphantly. "That's a good B." Liam calmly placed the bill back into her open purse. Then, he picked up the soggy $1 bill Arthur had thrown on the table. He smoothed it out against the Formica tabletop. "I remember this," Liam said softly. His voice was steady, clearer than it had been in years. "What are you babbling about?" Camilla snapped, her smile faltering. 3 years before everything fell apart," Liam said, looking her in the eye. "My mother threw a $100 bill at Eleanor, in the mud, in the rain. She told her to take a bus." Camilla rolled her eyes. "Oh, don't bring up that charity case." "I stood there and watched," Liam interrupted. "I watched my wife, pregnant with my son, crawl in the dirt for money. I thought I was powerful then. I thought money made me a king." He placed the $1 bill gently next to Arthur's coffee cup. "I don't want your money, Camilla," Liam said, "because I know what it costs. You have to pay for every cent of that with your dignity, and frankly, that's a price I'm not willing to pay anymore." The diner was dead silent. "You think you're better than me?" Camilla screeched, her face flushing red. "You're a waiter. You're nothing." "Maybe." Liam shrugged. He untied his apron. He folded it neatly and placed it on the counter. "I'm a waiter. I'm a felon. I'm broke. But tonight, I go home to an empty room and I sleep. I sleep soundly. Can you say the same, Camilla? Or do you lay awake wondering when Arthur's going to trade you in for a younger model, just like you traded me?" Arthur stopped laughing. He looked at Camilla with a sudden, cold appraisal. Camilla looked stricken. For a split second, the mask slipped, and Liam saw the sheer terror underneath. "I quit," Liam said to the room at large. He didn't wait for a response. He turned and walked toward the door. "Liam, you come back here!" Camilla screamed after him, her voice cracking. "You don't get to walk away from me! I won!" Liam pushed the door open. The cold wind hit his face, but it felt cleansing. It felt like baptism. He walked out into the rain and didn't look back. He walked for 3 miles in the drizzle. He didn't have a job anymore. He didn't have $1 to his name. But his chest felt lighter than it had in a decade. He reached the bus stop near his apartment. He sat on the wet bench, his legs aching. Next to him, someone had left a copy of the Wall Street Journal. It was soggy, but the front page was dry enough to read. Liam glanced at it idly. Then his breath hitched. The headline was bold: "The Titans of New York." The photo took up half the page. It showed a woman standing on the balcony of the New York Stock Exchange. She was breathtaking, not because of her clothes, but because of the sheer force of will radiating from her. Eleanor. And standing next to her, looking tall and confident in a prep school blazer, was a boy. He had curly hair and a smile that was identical to the one Liam used to see in the mirror when he was young. Leo. His son. The caption read, "Eleanor Kensington and her son, Leo, 10, announce a new billion-dollar initiative to help homeless families get back on their feet." Liam stared at the photo. His thumb traced the face of the boy he would never know. A lump formed in his throat, hot and painful. Tears pricked his eyes, mixing with the rain on his cheeks. He should be angry. He should be jealous. That should be him standing there. That was his blood. But as he looked at Leo's smile, a smile free of the arrogance and cruelty that had poisoned Liam's own life, he realized the truth. If Liam had raised him, Leo would have turned out just like him, weak, greedy, selfish. Eleanor had saved the boy. She had saved him from Liam. "Thank you," Liam whispered, his voice breaking as he spoke to the grainy newsprint. "Thank you for being strong enough to keep him away from me." He folded the newspaper carefully and placed it back on the bench. A bus pulled up, its air brakes hissing. The doors opened. "You getting on, pal?" the driver asked. Liam stood up. He checked his pockets. He had a bus pass with 1 ride left. "Yeah," Liam said, stepping onto the bus. "I'm moving forward." He took a seat in the back, leaned his head against the cold window, and watched the city pass by. He had nothing. And for the first time in his life, he understood that having nothing was the only way to finally be free. 10 years later. The Atlantic Ocean sparkled like a sheet of crushed diamonds, the sound of the waves providing a rhythmic backdrop to the soft hum of the string quartet. The estate that stood on the cliffs of the Hamptons was no longer the gloomy, imposing Hawthorne Manor. That structure had been gutted down to the studs 10 years ago. In its place, Eleanor had built the Sanctuary, a sprawling, modern masterpiece of glass and white stone that seemed to float above the coastline. It was open, filled with light, and, most importantly, filled with love. Today, the expansive lawn was dotted with white tents. Crystal glasses clinked, and the air smelled of sea salt and blooming jasmine. It was a coronation of sorts. Leo Kensington was 18. Eleanor stood on the second-floor terrace, looking down at the party. At 42, she was more beautiful than she had been in her 20s. The fear that used to live in her eyes had been replaced by a steel-spined serenity. She wore a simple white linen suit, her hair loose in the wind. She didn't need diamonds to prove her worth anymore. Her presence was currency enough. She watched the three men standing near the champagne tower. Sebastian and Julian Kensington were older now. The sharks of Wall Street had silver in their beards, and while they still commanded the respect of every room they entered, their edges had softened, at least when it came to the boy standing between them. "You look sharp, kid," Sebastian said, adjusting the lapel of Leo's tuxedo. "But remember, the suit doesn't make the man makes the suit." Liam Hawthorne wore $5,000 suits, and he was empty inside. "I know, Uncle Seb," Leo smiled. Leo was striking. He had grown into his height, standing 6'2" with broad shoulders. He had Liam's dark curls and strong jawline, a physical echo of a father he never knew, but his eyes were all Eleanor. They were kind. They were patient. "You're heading to Harvard in the fall," Julian added, handing Leo a glass of sparkling cider. "You're going to meet people who only care about your last name. They'll want to be close to the Kensington fortune. You have to be smart, Leo. You have to see the soul, not the wallet." "Mom taught me that," Leo said, his voice steady, "and you guys taught me how to spot a liar from a mile away." Julian laughed, clapping a heavy hand on his nephew's shoulder. "That we did. We built an empire for you, Leo. Not so you could be a playboy, but so you could have the power to change things. Don't waste it." Eleanor smiled from the balcony. They had done a good job. They had taken a boy who was thrown away like trash and polished him into a king. A shadow fell over her. She turned to see Graves, her head of security. He was gray now, but still as imposing as a mountain. He held a small silver tray. On it sat a single plain white envelope. "Madam," Graves said, his voice low. "This arrived at the gate. No return address. The censors cleared it. No chemical agents, no threats. But the handwriting." Eleanor froze. She didn't need to ask. She knew the loop of the E. She had seen it on love letters in college, and she had seen it on the divorce papers that ruined her life. "Where is—" she asked. "Gone," Graves said. He didn't leave a name, just said it was for the lady of the house. Eleanor picked up the envelope. It felt light, cheap. The paper was thin, the kind you buy at a drugstore. "Do you want me to dispose of it?" Graves asked, reaching out. "No," Eleanor said softly. "I'll handle this." Graves nodded and stepped back into the shadows. Eleanor stood alone with the ghost of her past. For a moment, her heart hammered. Was this a threat? A plea for money? Was Liam going to try to ruin this day, just like he had ruined so many others? She slit the envelope open with her thumbnail. Inside, there was no demand for cash. There was no lawyer's letterhead, there was just a 3x5 index card, written in shaky blue ballpoint pen. I saw the article in the journal. He looks like a good man. He has your eyes. I wanted to hate you for a long time. I wanted to believe you stole him from me. But I saw him today, really saw him, and I realized the truth. If I had raised him, he would have been just like me, and that would have been the worst curse I could put on a child. Thank you for being strong enough to be the father I couldn't be. You won't hear from me again. You were right about everything. Millage L. Eleanor read the words twice. She waited for the anger to come. She waited for the bitterness, the urge to call the police, the desire to hunt him down and crush him one last time. But nothing came. Instead, she felt a profound, quiet pity. She looked at the handwriting, shaky, uneven. It was the writing of a broken man. A man who had spent 10 years realizing that he had traded a diamond for a stone. He wasn't a monster under the bed anymore. He was just a sad memory, fading in the rearview mirror. "Mom!" Leo's voice rang out from the garden. He was waving at her, his face lit up with joy. Sebastian was laughing at something he said, and Julian was signaling for the cake to be brought out. "Come down!" Leo shouted. "We can't cut the cake without the boss!" Eleanor looked at her son. Then she looked at the index card. There was a candle burning on the bistro table next to her, citronella to keep the insects away. She held the corner of the card to the flame. The paper caught instantly. The fire curled the edges, turning the blue ink into black ash. She watched the words, "You were right," disappear into smoke. She didn't feel triumph. She felt release. She held it until the heat kissed her fingertips, then dropped the burning remnant into an ashtray. She watched it turn to gray dust, which was immediately caught by the ocean breeze and scattered over the Atlantic. Gone. Liam Hawthorne was finally, truly gone. Eleanor took a deep breath, filling her lungs with the clean, salty air of the life she had built. She adjusted her blazer, smoothed her hair, and turned her back on the ocean. "I'm coming," she called down, her voice strong and clear. She walked down the spiral staircase, her heels clicking a rhythm of victory. She wasn't walking down as a victim, or a divorcee, or a scorned woman. She walked into the garden as a mother, as a sister, as a titan. As she stepped onto the grass, Leo ran over and hugged her, a bear hug that lifted her slightly off the ground. "Everything okay?" he asked, sensing a shift in her energy. "Who was the letter from?" Eleanor pulled back and smoothed his cheek. She looked into his eyes and saw only the future. "Nobody." She smiled, and for the first time in 18 years, she completely meant it. "Just an old subscription I finally canceled." She took his arm. "Come on," Eleanor said, leading him toward the massive cake and the family that was waiting for them. "Make a wish, Leo. The world is yours." And as the music swelled and the applause began, Eleanor didn't look back at the dark ocean. She only looked forward, into the light. Liam Hawthorne spent his life chasing gold, never realizing he was holding a diamond until he threw it away. He learned the hardest lesson of all. A woman's value isn't in her pedigree, but in her loyalty. And a man's worth isn't in his wallet, but in how he protects his family. Eleanor didn't just survive. She conquered. She turned her tragedy into an empire and raised a king from the ashes of a pauper. What would you have done if you were Eleanor? Would you have forgiven Liam, or did he get exactly what he deserved? Let us know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story of justice and redemption, please hit that like button. It helps us create more stories like this for you. Don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell so you never miss the next episode of Billionaire Betrayals. Thanks for watching.